Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Monday, March 17th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them, you can use them as a powerful tutorial to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also go to your App Store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We help people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd greatly appreciate you doing so by sending us an email. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, and or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you through an email, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred. You can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. And if you're listening to us on the internet at live.needle.com/mindshiftersradio, we're grateful that you're here. Glad you're finding some value in this. And from that position, you're not able to type in a comment or talk to us directly. So if you go to your app store and type in Needle, Nedl, and search for that, download the AI tuner for live radio, and open the app, sign in, answer some questions, and then you'll have the capacity to either type a comment or click on the phone icon and talk to us voice to voice. And as I said, we greatly appreciate whenever anybody does that because it makes it so much easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention is to be of service. So please let us know how we can be of service. and what would be of most interest and use to you as we spend this time together today. We were on Friday in um, in some kind of interesting synchronicity. Um, Susan Bingham worked through an entire worksheet on Friday in the first hour, and then in the second hour, um, Carrie called in from Mexico and did a worksheet with Michael, start to finish. So uh, it's interesting how we go sometimes long stretches without any active worksheet process done on the internet show, and then two in one day. So those are available wherever you get your podcasts. I I I I use the Apple platform, so their podcast app, and it updates within an hour or two of my uploading the files. So uh, that's that's the most direct way to get the archives right now is to go to whatever app store that you like to use for your podcasts and search for the Mind Shifters Radio podcasts. These days, a lot of them are also being made available on YouTube thanks to Jeannie's efforts. So you can go to the YouTube channel and get access to them there. She's also arranging different ways to have uh, the transcript posted so that it's searchable. And for those who are so inclined, that's another good option to search for podcasts that might have a theme that you want to listen to. So as I mentioned, we did the worksheet on Friday that Susan Bingham did, and just at the point that I was about to read a worksheet that I had done Thursday night in the support group when nobody else had a worksheet to do, and I had a situation come up. So I I made the commitment to read that worksheet process, and as long as no one has a hand up or no one's typing in the comment section of the app, I will turn back to that. Just a reminder that we had finished reading the book by Alan Cohen titled Of Course in Miracles, and so we were thinking about what to do next in terms of, do we read another book? Do we have a thread going of conversation? Will we get enough people involved that the the conversation carries us for a while and we don't need to be reading a book with commentary? But first things first, this worksheet opportunity came up. And what I like to do with these is present them in such a way that uh, it's an instruction set. What I tell people as I introduce them to the reality management worksheet in my office is I use the 5-step short version that is available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website on the educational materials page. And if you go to that page, the first 4 or 5 links are all about the this shortened reality management worksheet. And oddly enough, as I try to go to that website right now, it's down for whatever reason. So I don't know if it's my browser's down. But anyway, the reality management worksheet as an abbreviated version with only 4 essential steps, and the fifth step you can do after the fact if you want, which is to just think the most loving thought you can come up with, and then breathe into it until you shift the mind energy. Okay, so it's coming up on my tablet. It's not coming up on my laptop, but if you go to the mindshiftersacademy.org website and click on the educational materials page, the first 3 links are what I'm referring to. One is called the short version of the reality management worksheet, and then there's the written short version of the reality management worksheet, and then there's the forgiveness pattern PDF, and then there's an audio file of me reciting the forgiveness pattern. So the first 4 links on that web page, mindshiftersacademy.org, and then the educational materials page. And the first 4 links are directly related to this shorter version. And I introduce people to it because then they can have an experience. They can, build some brain cells, Michael would say, for the basic concept, and then they can have an experience where it benefits them. And then, if and when they want to, they can graduate to the full 7-step worksheet process as Michael and Jeannie make it available now. And that, is part of the refinement over the years. For a lot of years when we were doing the support group, we used a 12-step version, which was not as long, as lengthy as the 11-step version that was available on the worksheet on the website. And then all of a sudden, Michael and Jeannie went to Hawaii, and they were doing something. One week they had a whole week of workshops they did, and then they traveled either to the other side of the island or to a different island, and then they came back, and they were shocked to be in front of the same group of people again and realize how little they had actually remembered about the worksheet process from the previous week. And Michael used that as the impetus to revamp the worksheet and distill it down to only 7 steps instead of the 12, and to try and make it lighter, brighter, cleaner on the page, etc. And eventually it filled in again. So now it's this full 7-step worksheet that you can get if you go to the whyagain.org website and click on the 2 words that say start here, and then you scroll down to worksheets or the current 7-step version. And it looks like somebody's trying to put 4 or 5 pages worth of information on one page, which is essentially what Michael says about it, is that when he does his presentation, he does his, the reality management worksheet, or this workshop that presents the reality management worksheet, which he usually calls "Why is this happening to me again?" His, you know, core workshop. He says, I don't know if I'm ever going to get in front of these people again, so I want to have as much of the information that I've learned in their hands so that they can make improvements in their life. And that's why this thing is just jam packed with words and steps and releases. And when I talk to people about it, and the value of the longer version of the worksheet process over the short version, is the short version has its benefits. I can do it when I'm in the middle of a conversation with somebody. I can do the mental short version. of recognizing I don't like how I'm feeling and put a feeling, an emotion word on it, and then recognize that anytime I generate a negative emotion, it's because I've been pouring my mind energy into a particular pattern of thought. So I identify the thought I'm using to create that emotion. And then in the third step, I recognize that every time I have a thought that's generating a negative emotion, that thought itself is going to contain a goal that's not getting met. So I stay as close as I can to the words of the thought that's causing the negative emotion, and I formulate the goal it's not getting met. And then I say, I cancel the thought and I cancel the goal, and I ask to be shown the hidden part of my own mind that's actually creating this upset. And I breathe and I soften, and then I just scan my body and notice how I'm feeling. And that's basically it. If I want to, I can end with the fifth step, which is to think a loving thought and breathe into it. And I can do that as a mental exercise when I'm in the middle of talking to somebody, when I'm driving in my car, when I'm doing dishes. I don't need to stop and get a paper and a pen, and I can get significant benefit and maybe even tap into a deep insight in that process. And then I have had people say, well, then what's with this 7-step worksheet with all these words on it? And I say, well, that's a whole different level of benefit. Every time I read all of the words on the reality management worksheet, I'm reminding myself of deeper truths than what I was fed by my culture or my family of origin. And I'm basically, every time I read this, I'm peeling off layers of false conditioning and introducing myself to a deeper, more accurate truth of my life. Examples of that on the worksheet say that hostility and fear always come from internal corrupt data. And whenever I'm in that experience of generating hostility or fear, I can know that what I'm doing right now is something that doesn't really make any sense. It's not coherent, it's not productive, and some part of me is driven to continue to do it, hoping that eventually it'll work out well, even though what I'm doing isn't making any sense and isn't productive. Sustained incoherence means doing something that doesn't make any sense and continuing to do it, hoping that eventually it'll make sense. So, another aspect of this worksheet is it reminds me that if I'm in pain, my thinking is in error. Whereas my culture has taught me to think if I'm in kind of mental or emotional pain, there must be a problem in the world around me. And I should, uh, you know, decide scanning the environment with an eye towards who I should attack or who I should run away from or who I should bribe or seduce to try and get them to change so that I don't have to experience this internal sensation that we call tightness or tension or upset or emotion. So there's all kinds of good reminders, and the more I practice by reading these things, the more I help train my mind to understand that I'm the one who's generating every emotion I experience. So my worksheet had to do with how I had created um, a podcast for the Journey's Dream podcast that got released a couple weeks ago, and it was what I considered one of the more important ones I've done in the past 5 or 6 years with Journey's Dream. And I forwarded it to a woman who I went to college with, who remains to this day one of the smartest people I've ever met. And as I got her response later that night, I generated such upset it felt like a punch in the gut. And I understood that that was just me. She hadn't written anything nasty or critical. And so I was doing a worksheet on that situation. And so the worksheet I will report on now as follows. I, Tim, who am love, am experiencing the emotion of hurt, emotional hurt, kind of an ache. And I get reminded that hostility and fear, or any kind of hurt like that, comes from this process of sustained incoherence. And my mind literally wants me to believe I'm feeling this hurt because of something somebody wrote in an email to me, which is complete denial. It's denying the fact that my emotions are created internally and that it's the logical result of a process I'm engaging in, that I'm pouring my mind energy into a thought, and that's what's creating my hurt. And when that happens, it blocks me from my awareness that my true nature is love. And so the story is that this woman implied that I missed an important aspect in my interview. And that's not what happened. That's not what she did, but that's what my mind was telling me. And that's what my mind was using to generate the emotion of hurt. So I remind myself that if I'm in pain, my thinking is in error. And if they're the one with the problem, why am I the one with the pain? And the thought I was using to create this emotional hurt was, she thinks I'm stupid. And my punishment thought for her was that I just distance myself from her. And the punishment thought for myself was that I just beat myself up emotionally over this. The next step in the worksheet asks me to choose to honor truth and willingly face and process out all of the disease producing energies for and from all my relations and generations, and to release and surrender all of these negative thoughts, the negative emotion, and my story about it, and my punishment thoughts, surrender it all to love. And then it asks me to decide, what is my mind telling me has to happen in order for all of this to go away? What's the goal I'm using that isn't getting met? Well, I want this person to see me as good and smart. That was my goal. And then I cancel my need to be right and cancel my need to make up another story out of these brain cells to hallucinate the proof that my fear and hostility based story, my reality, is true. And then I did that loving focus to shift my heart space energy over to love. And I thought some wonderful, loving memories of my sons and did a little meditation about that and shifted away from the emotion of hurt and over to that emotion of compassion and joy. And then I read step 5 where it says, here's another reminder. Whenever I'm upset, my perception is built out of corrupt data. It's either the wrong 9 bits of information when 10,000 brain cells are firing, or it's the right 9 bits of information, but I've spun them around to some kind of a negative interpretation that's my own creation. So by canceling my goal, that part of my mind that's been projected into my image of somebody else, that collapses. And so I want to hold love conscious, active, and present and collapse my mind's lies by canceling my goal for this friend of mine to see me as good and smart. And I ask for assistance from Ruka Dakucha, that elemental force specific to humans that's there to break off the effects of our errors in thought and guide us to truth and happiness if we just ask it to. And I ask for that assistance to incline me toward healing, to restore me to my awareness of my newborn essence as love, to heal my denial about the fact that I'm the one creating this upset, and to heal my capacity to generate this emotional hurt. and to help me open a direct conscious relationship with and gently remove whatever's been denied and dissociated from that part of my mind. And then I did the forgiveness pattern, which is available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website as a PDF and as an audio file of me reciting it. And I breathed and softened and canceled my need to be right and left myself open to whatever was going to show up. And what I flashed on was a series of realizations that go back all the way into grade school. And this lifelong pattern I've had of surrounding myself with friends that are much smarter than I am, and then generating fear that I'm not going to be good enough or smart enough to keep up with them. And then I saw things about my college experience. Uh, my college experience is where I met this woman that was sending me the email earlier last week. And even when I met her in college, I recognized this is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And then I saw a situation from grad school where there was a misstep that I had taken, thinking that I was right and was completely off base. So it was like a Rolodex flipping images. And I recognized that, oh, so here's just another instance of me projecting onto this other person a set of expectations and this like a desperate hope on my part to be seen as good enough or smart enough or even at a fundamental level of competence. And what I saw as I did that release is that my coloring, the interpretation that I create and put on her words in this email is distorted by this lifelong pattern of seeing myself as less than in terms of the intellectual capacity from just a whole series of friends that I was blessed to have as good friends over the years. And it brought a little emotion to the surface, a little, eyes watering, no big sobbing, crying, but it it, it left me with this kind of a of a blank feeling, and then within minutes I felt relief. And I made some notes about these various lifelong patterns. I flipped the worksheet over and made notes about everything I was just saying to you, the stuff from college, grade school, graduate school, etc. And then I just asked myself, I asked to be shown, I asked Ruka to help me see how I have not seen myself as good enough and smart enough. And so I want her to see me as good enough and smart enough, and yet I'm sitting here harboring negative thoughts about my own ability to be on a par with her or keep up with her. So then I did this commitment to living a human life and to be connected to love. And to achieve that, I did a mass canceling of all the times I've ever wanted anybody to see me as good and smart. And I had started this worksheet at about an 8 out of 10 upset, and it was down to at least a 4 by the time I got to that part of the worksheet. And then I made the commitment to do 2 more worksheets on this set of notes on the back of the page. One is about a situation that arose in college, and the other was about this lifelong pattern with friends that, had greater intellectual capacity, and how I had, without really realizing it, spun that into a negative on my part rather than um, taking comfort from the fact that these people see me as a good friend and have stayed in touch over the years, just holding on to some negative impression about myself. So, and I breathed and softened, and I did a little bit of EFT tapping after the group was over and felt even more energy moving, and was down to a 1 or a 0 upset level over that, with a whole new perspective on other worksheets I can do to keep dismantling some of the, small t trauma energy, I would say, that I've amassed over the years, um, with that double-edged sword of being surrounded by people who are decidedly more intellectually powerful than I am. And it's like I say, it's a double-edged sword. It's a blessing and a curse, because it's the kind of situation where I will never have that intellectual capacity, and yet I have other qualities that endear me to them, and their intellectual capacity isn't the only reason that I have a friendship with them. If they were, just off the charts intellectually intelligent, but they didn't have similar values and priorities and emphasis on relationship in their life, then they wouldn't be good friends of mine. So that's the worksheet that I agreed to present, and um, we're open for comments and questions. Susan Bingham, are you there?
I am. Hi, Dr. Tim. Good worksheet. I have a question.
Yes.
When you did the tapping, because I've been trying to use tapping at the end of a wake up sheet that you gave me last week. And what did you say? Do you say stuff or you just tap?
Yes, I focus on the fundamental tapping that I was taught from the DVDs I bought of Gary Craig, who's the guy that created it. The real simple version of it is that I make a statement that even though I have a particular problem in the moment, whether it's a physical, a mental, or emotional discomfort, I focus on one of them and I give it a name. So in this case, it was that gut punch feeling. It was that upset that I could feel um, in my abdomen.
Mm-hmm.
It almost felt like a pressure in my stomach that was making it difficult to get a nice, full, easy set of air into my lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, even though I'm feeling this upset or this tension in my stomach, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm feeling this tension in my stomach, I'm going to pretend it can get better, even though I don't know how. Things like that. And
Yeah.
then as I tap on the various points, I just remind myself that I'm tapping about this upset in my stomach or this discomfort in
Mm-hmm.
my stomach. And I do the rounds of tapping that way. And then at the end, I say, so even though I have this upset in my stomach, I'm going to choose to love and accept myself, and I'm going to choose to pretend it can get better, even though I don't know how. And then I take a nice deep cleansing breath, scan the body, and notice, has it gone to a place where it's more intense, less intense, or stayed the same. And then I can either do more rounds of tapping or I can switch it up.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing it on a physical sensation, for the first round, this upset in my stomach, this tension in my stomach, then If it comes down, I keep tapping just that way, focusing on the physical sensation.
Hmm.
If it stays and doesn't shift, then I usually shift over to, all right, so what emotion am I aware of when I realize that tapping on this physical sensation didn't improve it? Well, often I'm afraid then that the tapping isn't going to work and the pain is going to stay. So then I tap on my fear
Hmm.
that this physical discomfort is going to stay or get worse. And most of the time, once I focus on the emotion that's tied to it, the physical sensation starts to move as well.
Mm. And when you're tapping, are you tapping all over, like top of your head, forehead, under your eyes?
Yes,
Or, okay, so often when I'm doing a wake up sheet, it'll be in the middle of the night and I'm hoping to get back to sleep as well as doing the wake up sheet. So to move my arms that far and everything, I just end up tapping lightly on the tops of each of my legs because that's the most accessible place and also the most comfortable. It's like a lazy approach. Um, and I trust that that's better than nothing because you're balancing your two sides, your two hemispheres. No matter where you're tapping, if it's opposite sides of your body, it can have some good effect, right?
that's what a lot of people believe and a lot of people experience. The other real
Yeah.
shortcut that I offer to people is the ultra shortcut is put a hand palm up and lay the other hand palm up in it so it's grabbing my wrist. And so if I put my right hand out, palm up, and I drop my left hand in it so that my thumb and index finger wrap around at the base of my wrist. So my hand is flopping, right? My upturned hand from my left hand
Mm-hmm.
is being grabbed by the wrist by my upturned hand in my right hand. Now my
Okay.
right fingers are curled around my left hand in
I
the
see.
place where it would be checking for pulse points if I were a doctor or a nurse.
Okay.
And I just gently but firmly squeeze there with the thought that I'm just pushing these energies through my meridian system.
I see.
And then I just switch hands and do the other side. Now I've got all the acupressure points stimulated
Mm.
because they all come in the fingertips, through the wrists up through the body and out the toes, in the toes up through the body and out the fingertips. And the other thing is some people like to just gently massage their fingers with a focus on the end of each finger where the nail
Oh.
beds end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another shortcut. But then, that's it's each individual finger and thumb, so it takes a little bit longer than just
All
grabbing the
right.
wrist and squeezing the wrist.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I thought you were going to mention is sometimes when people are waking in the middle of the night and they're trying to use tapping, the tapping is too invigorating and too stimulating. So
Right.
instead of tapping, we just gently rub over the eyebrows from the center to the side,
Mm-hmm.
under the eye from the nose out to the side, under the nose above the lip, just gently rubbing,
Oh, that's interesting.
below the lip above the chin, just gently
Mm-hmm.
rubbing. It's as much about intention as it is the actual physical sensation. And because it can be calming and soothing, you can just take your hands and gently rub over the collarbone spot and just be thinking as you do these and you're gently rubbing on these points that your intention is to keep the acupressure energy circulating,
Mm-hmm.
to remove any blockages and just let it smooth out and balance out your energies.
We
So
were
that's a way to do it in the middle of the night.
I Kristen Ryman taught me years ago how to do tapping, and she had a script, and it would be like, even though I'm mad at my brother, I love myself and God loves me unconditionally. Something like that. She would, that was her little script. And I used it for the wake up sheet you gave me last week, and I just didn't get anything out of it. And it might have been the script rather than the tapping. Anyway, it's no big deal. But I was wondering if you had a secret script or something that you say that
Well, the
helps.
the the secret that Gary Craig put out there is that you just focus on the problem
Mm-hmm.
paired with the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people put out scripts that they find very beneficial, but
Mm-hmm.
I basically I've experienced two general camps: people who like the scripts and people who don't.
Yeah.
Because a script isn't talking specifically about what's going on for me in this moment. It's something as a general pattern of thoughts and issues and connections that somebody's come up with related to low back pain or related to fear of getting older or related to, fear of flying, whatever my particular issue is.
Mm-hmm.
However, if I use the words that come to my mind when I'm tapping and breathing and visualizing, reconnecting these energies in my system
Mm.
and allowing healing to happen, allowing whatever energy that I'm feeling to be there, welcoming it, allowing it to be there, and releasing it to let it flow through me. If I'm
Mm.
thinking in those terms,
Mm.
then whatever words come to me to say are going to be a product of whatever's vibrating in me at the time, and it's likely to be more beneficial.
That makes total sense. And so maybe you don't want to do this, but could you give an example of what you did, what words you used for this wake up sheet that you just did?
Yeah, yeah, it's as simple as what I just said because when it was over, I was still feeling this discomfort in my upper and lower abdomen. It felt like kind of a gut punch, and I was having that situation where it felt like it was difficult for me to catch a breath. And
Yeah.
so I just talked about even though I have this discomfort in my stomach,
Mm-hmm.
and even though it's difficult for me to catch my breath or a full breath, I deeply and completely love and accept myself, and I allow this energy to be here and I release it to flow through me.
Oh,
And
okay.
then as I was on the different tapping points, I would just remind myself I'm tapping about this discomfort in my stomach. I'm tapping about this difficulty taking a full breath. And it would sound like, this difficulty taking a full breath, and then tap on another point, this difficulty taking a full breath, and then move to another point, this difficulty taking a full breath, all the way through.
Mm.
And then I just take a nice deep, cleansing breath and let it go slowly and scan the body and notice what I'm feeling most.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's anything less than a 1 or a 0, I can do additional rounds of tapping
Mm.
with with that long slow breathing cycle going. So I'm keeping the breath moving.
That's really interesting, partly because you're giving yourself this attention and intention and healing and physical energy, gentleness. You're giving it to yourself. And I went to a physical therapy session last week, um, and been a long time since I've done anything like get a massage or have anyone, a doctor might thump my back with a stethoscope to see how my breathing is. But this young woman just put her hands on my hip and I've got radiating weird nerve things going on. And I thought, just having her put her hands there, I thought, I want more of this. But why should I want it from someone else? I could do this myself. But it seemed to me that I was still in that split where I need to get it from someone else. And you're telling us with this tapping that we can provide that for ourselves. We don't need it from someone else.
Well, that's an interesting interpretation of what I'm saying. It's always good to have somebody who's well intentioned, who's caring, who's willing to share their energy with you, and there's
Mm-hmm.
benefit to be had there, synergy, etc. And yes, it is probably possible for you to get it from yourself. One of the things that floods into my mind when you say that is an experience I had when I was in graduate school, which is, a lot of years ago now.
Yeah.
And I was in my 20s, my late 20s, and I'd been doing so much for so long, been so busy, so swamped, working 3 and 4 jobs at a time, trying to go to grad school full time the first year and a half. Went back to part time because I was up to like 4 different part time jobs and school.
Mm,
And then, after the first year, you have to start doing practicums as you're taking your classwork. And
mm.
so I'd been several years at this breakneck pace, and I wasn't dating anybody, and I was in the mode of, doing things, volunteering my time to tutor people, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden, I found myself sitting in a barber chair for the first time, and it wasn't just a barber, it was some kind of a salon. It was one of the first
Yeah.
times I'd been to a place where they take you to a separate chair and have you lay your head back and they shampoo your hair.
Right. Mm,
It was like one of the first times in my life that I'd ever had that happen. And as I sat there and this other person was massaging my head, even though she had gloves on, massaging my head, it was otherworldly. And
isn't
then
it
I
amazing?
and then
Yeah.
I sat there getting this haircut, and it just sank in. I had a hard time not crying. I probably did shed a few tears before it was over at the whatever the sensations were about how the deprivation had been so thorough for so long that I had forgotten all about it. It had been
Mm-hmm.
so long since I had just sat back and let somebody else do something for me
Mm.
that was nurturing, that was comforting, that was productive. And that's what came to mind when you said that.
Well, it is like that. And I was thinking, well, I have family. We hug each other. I have a husband. We have a relationship. So it isn't as if I'm never getting touched. I think it was because it was without any effort to have a relationship experience, or it was
Just the
just
receiving.
touch.
Right. It was
Yeah.
just the receiving.
Yeah. It was impersonal in a way, but it felt very nurturing. And I've been puzzled about that. I thought maybe I should, before the pandemic, I went every once a month, I would get a massage from this wizard of a young woman who was really good. But when the pandemic started up, she canceled a lot and there were a lot of restrictions, and I stopped going. Plus, it was a hardship. She was about 20 minutes away by car, and it was not cheap either. So I stopped and I never started it up again. And even then, it was, I don't know, maybe it was this young woman. She had probably had a way about her or something like that. But I thought, oh my gosh, keep doing that. But of course, she was doing it diagnostics and testing me out and stuff. It was quite different. Yeah, it's just something to think about. Hmm.
There's a whole series of exercises we were called to do in graduate school around being willing to receive and what it felt like to give. And so at one point, we were invited to get into the swimming pool
Mm-hmm.
and one at a time take turns floating while other people supported us and massaged our arms and legs and feet and
Oh,
hands and
that's
head.
it.
And the difficulty that so many people had relaxing into that
Mm.
and allowing
Mm-hmm.
themselves to be the focus of this nurturing attention,
Mm.
and what people learned about how some people were uncomfortable giving,
Yeah.
taking someone's hand as they're floating and massaging their hands and fingers. Some people were uncomfortable doing that. They would love to have it done to themselves, but they didn't want to do it for somebody else. And
Mm.
others were on the other side of it, where
Yeah.
they could do it for somebody else, but it wasn't comfortable for them receiving.
Yeah.
And of
That's.
course, there were a few people that were comfortable in both,
Mm-hmm.
and that usually just spoke to us about what we had experienced in our families of origin and what
Mm.
work we might need to do to
Mm.
be able to be more um, closer to transparent in our role as therapists.
That is such a cool idea. And that would be a great learning tool. Because this woman who was doing me, she was doing me to find out something. There was a purpose. I wonder if I had just been lying there and she had just put her hands on me for no reason. I might have felt as if I was imposing on her or wondered if I was ugly or, I can see a lot of garbage coming up if it didn't have a purpose. And it wasn't going to last very long either. This was just part of the, oh boy, that's so interesting. Anyway, yeah.
Well, and the powerful, interesting part of it is that you're creating all that in your head.
Yeah.
It's not happening
Mm-hmm.
anywhere but in your head, and you make it mean this or that. And you say,
Right.
"Oh, I was feeling that way because she was doing it for a purpose." That's what your mind was telling you.
Yeah.
And somebody else in that position, their mind could be telling them, this is awkward or inappropriate or,
Mm-hmm.
all over the map. We can have,
Yeah.
and we do create our
Yeah.
meaning for it. This way of the Course in Miracles has a line where it says, I give this situation in front of me all the meaning it has for me. Right? The deep truth in that is that we're all creating our own meanings for life.
Totally. I had that therapist that I loved so much years ago, older woman. She's a lot younger than I am now, but she once said, "What is that?
Susan Bingham,
I'm still here." What
that
was that?
I have no idea.
I didn't do anything.
I'm
Well,
glad it stopped, whatever it was.
I know.
I'm
Well,
just
this,
sitting here with the app on my phone
yep,
and holding it in my hand, watching our transcript, and then
yeah,
all of a sudden we have music.
that's so funny. Yeah, I didn't do anything either. My phone's beside me here. I haven't even touched it. So, anyway, this therapist said to me, everything, I've quoted this on the show before, I remember. She said, everything, no matter what, is an opportunity for holy learning. That's how she put it. But that's what you were just saying. I just love that idea. Yeah, we create with everything.
Yeah, that sounds like the one of the fundamental messages from the Way of Mastery and A Course in Miracles is
Mm.
everything is, like the Way of Mastery says, every day when you wake up, you are already in the perfect classroom, the perfect ashram for you
Oh, yeah,
to
that's
learn and
right.
grow. Everything about your life that you used to call ordinary, through the Way of Mastery, they let us know that there's no such thing as ordinary. It's a miracle that you're here.
Yeah.
You are a miracle of life expressing in form, and there's um, advantage to be gained every day with whatever we go through.
Mm.
And the choice is ours. We can label it as a wonderful opportunity to learn, like the reality management worksheet here says in the seventh step. I'm grateful for this opportunity to heal. I'm going to look at what happened, my reading this email from this friend and interpreting it negatively and feeling like I got punched in the gut, I'm going to look
Mm.
at that as an opportunity to heal. I'm
Mhm.
going to do worksheets on it until I unravel what was my mind telling me about this person and this situation that's clearly false. How do I know it's false? Because it results in me feeling a negative emotional state.
You said something at the end of finishing that worksheet, like you had come to the conclusion that you could be good friends on other with other ways of connecting, even though you're not as bright as she is. Now that's my rewording, and I might have changed it, but I just wanted to say maybe you're every bit as brilliant as she is. What is this thing of
Well,
she's
so
up?
so so uh, I run into this a lot with people, and you're one of them. We butt heads on this from time to time. Here's the point. From my perspective, there's no diminishing of me
Mm,
when I recognize that somebody has an intellectual capacity that's greater or at the same level or a little bit below. It's just one aspect of us as people. It's like
mhm,
saying I'm at my my height, at the height of my height, before I started shrinking with age, I was 6 foot 4 inches tall. That's not like a compliment to me. That's just what happens when you get out the tape measure, right?
mhm, yeah.
When I say that these people are decidedly brighter than I am intellectually, it's just a fact of them of how easily they read and retain things, what their test scores are. I don't attribute that to them having higher value as people. And when I have people in my office on a regular basis, especially when they are decidedly above average in intelligence, which I'm qualified to make an assessment of because I did years of psychological testing
Mm,
and I've been doing therapy for over 50 years now. So
mm,
I'm qualified to make a statement that this person is probably within the average range of intelligence or decidedly above average or way above average intelligence, etc. And when I do that, I'm not telling them that they're better or worse than anybody else. I'm trying to help them get a handle on what it feels like to hear this truth. And
mm,
does it conflict with their own images of themselves and their
mm,
beliefs about themselves?
mhm,
And so, you know, I with this very same woman, we were in the car once a few years after college, and we were driving in the mountains, and I remember this scene very well. And I said to her, you know what, I'm just blown away by her memory.
mhm,
She ended up being an English major, and she can quote from poems and plays and authors, and my mind never did that well.
mm, yeah.
And so I complimented her and her memory and said, wow, it's just amazing. And she flipped it around and she said, my memory, she said, you remember every conversation and who said what and what their mood was. And she said,
Mm,
I can't believe the stuff that you recall.
mm,
But it's a whole different category of thing,
yeah.
right?
Mhm,
And so we 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 have these different areas of specialties that come easy to us. And we've all got things that come easy and things that are not so easy. But anyway, it just suffice it to say, I don't take it as a put down to me when I recognize somebody's taller than me or somebody has an intellectual
mhm,
capacity that's significantly higher than me. I don't look at that as a negative to me. I just look at it as a fact that makes it easier to deal with when I allow things to be what they are. So I recognize we've gone over, and I appreciate your call again. As always, thank you so much for being here. I will end the call with you and remind us of the term love. We're made of the stuff that we call love. We actually are love. And I will close off the app and the studio so Michael and Jeannie